Welcome back to the Hood, everyone. I'm Zacharoni, and we are nearly close to a new generation with the PS5 and Xbox Series X finally revealing their numbers, and pre-orders are quickly being nabbed like rings at a casino night. So now it's time to recap some of the games I've been playing throughout the last 3 months and what I think of them. So without further ado, please be seated, and here's what's on my completed menu so far. On June 7, 2020, I started playing Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action. Then on June 19, 2020, I finished the story with a bad ending, and then on July 8, 2020, I finished New Game Plus with a good ending and 2 extra endings. While starting up Cyberpunk Bartender Action for the first time, the game recommended me to take my time, sit back, and relax with a drink and snack while playing it. Then I was presented with the game's protagonist, Jill, who is working as a bartender so she can pay her bills that she keeps getting for her rent. And while serving customers, you are given a reminder on the bottom for what you need to make so you can have good results for your payment on each day. So there's no danger of failing, given that there's no time limit to keep you intimidated. However, there are certain moments where she would need a particular item to keep her focus on the job, but will risk her chances for paying the bill if she's not careful. So on my third playthrough, I got the bad ending because I didn't have enough to pay rent, which I was worried at first because I thought it was going to end in tears, but it turned out to be quite humorous. And unfortunate for Jill, of course. But on my next playthrough, I paid the last bill, and I was rewarded with an ending that was also humorous, along with the extra endings I got if certain conditions were made. But that's not the reason why I kept playing. No, I kept playing because I want to know more about the characters that Jill is serving. And these include Jamie, a mercenary who may look intimidating, but he's actually a pretty chill guy once you get to know him. Vigilia, a big Mikey chap who enjoys quizzing us like what order it's 17, and Dorothy, a cheerful sex robot girl, no I'm not joking, who is a close friend of Jill who loves hugs and always helpful to others when they are down. Also, I understand why Storgero's got the hots for Jill's boss, Dina, because she's tough, encouraging, cares so much about her employees, and she's got some hilarious moments like getting her head stuck in this helmet. Plus, Jill's got an interesting backstory involving freedom and regret, which is all wrapped up quite nicely at the final slice of her story. Throw in a great soundtrack that I can play in any order, in or out of work, and I enjoyed my time with Valhalla. Oh, and just like Storgero said, a sequel was announced 2 years ago, which might not be long if it hits its 2020 release date. On June 26, 2020, I started playing Ninjala, and then on July 1st, 2020, I played and beaten episode 1 of its single player mode. The one thing that got me interested in Ninjala was the cast of characters, which are well designed and fun to look at, like Becca with her yellow coat and pink skulls that matches her hair. Plus, the animated shorts that you can find on their YouTube page are enjoyable to watch, explaining each character's origin, well, 3 of them so far, and their reasoning in the main game. But unfortunately, presentation is the only strength of this game, because after playing it to a few low ups, I found Ninjala lacking in content combined with uninteresting gameplay. So, Ninjala is an 8-player brawler with a goal to defeat as many opponents and droids as you can to score points. And while it's got a wide selection of weapons like fake katanas and hammers that play differently, combat doesn't feel that exciting, particularly with the parry mechanic where it's more about luck rather than skill really. Plus, the game launched with 2 maps, which what made me lost interest with this game. Not even the 3rd map that they released didn't keep me coming back for more. Also, I don't think it was wise to make the game free to play really, because once you pick a character for your avatar, it doesn't come with the default outfit that was advertised throughout development. So you had to grind and grind to unlock the right costume to match the character, which is actually the bane of microtransactions. Oh, and presenting the single player as episodical DLC is disappointing, with episode 1 that can be beaten in an hour. But I did have a good time with it, even if it took place on one setting throughout the entire game. Overall, Ninjala may be charming to look at, and in time, it might become the well-known free-to-play title to date, but as it stands, there's no denying that its content come up short, and its gameplay is just an afterthought. On July 1st, 2020, I played and beaten Min Min's classic mode in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You know, I played ARMS before at my gaming hangout, and unlike Smash Bros., ARMS was all about extending your arms out while playing Keep Away. So I was wondering how an ARMS character like Min Min would work in a game about knocking your opponents and sometimes do mid-air combos. Well, each of her arms is tied to the attack and special buttons, with standard attack utilizing the dragon, and the others for the free you can switch out by pressing down and special at the same time. So she's sort of a keep away character that utilizes distance, and she's better than the last fighter, Baleb, because she's unique with her trademark ability that allows her to deflect incoming projectiles with her legs, which can be tricky to pull off really. But I don't think she comes close to the other characters like Joker or Terry to be my favorites from the DLC roster. As for the stage that comes with her, which is based on Springman stage, well, it's interesting where you have two platforms that will accelerate you up when you press the jump button while on them. But I think they should have picked another stage which had an interesting gimmick, like Ribbon Girl stage where platforms disappears once you hit them, or Kid Cobra stage where you have a platform that can be controlled when you stand on them. So overall, Min Min is a great addition to the Smash Bros. Roster, but it will probably get overshadowed by the next character, which I'm easily anticipating for in the upcoming future. On July 14th, 2020, I started playing Metro 2033, and then on July 26th, 2020, I beaten the game. At first glance, Metro 2033 is not a striking looking game, with its muddy textures, numerous bugs that I ran into while playing it, and the gameplay is mixed, with stealth that didn't quite work at times, and every time I throw a knife at an enemy, it usually misses, even if the reticle was on them. Though I do like some of the gun designs in the game, where you need to charge them up to have lethal effects against enemies, and they feel great to fire at times. But the real strength of the game comes from the atmosphere, where in Alternative 2013, the civilians of Moscow are residing in the metro tunnel system after the bombs dropped in 2013, making it uninhabitable for people to live in. From the dark subway tunnels to NPCs chatting around stories of life right now, and spreading rumors about certain creatures that haunt the lands of Moscow, makes it feel like a real world to experience, even if the Russian accent can be a little bit cartoony at times. And then there's the story, where you are a silent protagonist who only speaks outside of the game Antura, who I hope I pronounced that name right, who is traveling through the metro system to give a message to the Spartan Order about the upcoming threat to the country. What I like about the story is Antura had just got one objective, and it never changed throughout the adventure, and every character he meets is easily likable. So even if there's a small war between the communists and the Nazis, not German related by the way, you don't have to worry because the communists has clearly got everything under their control. As for the final slice, well, it may be straightforward, then trippy later on, and it was satisfying to get to the top. But the ending what I got revealed the shocking truth about the threat, making me realize, what the hell did I just done? And then I discovered that the game got another ending if certain conditions were made. But with its broken gameplay, it can be hard to recommend to do another playthrough. So overall, Metro 2033 is like a burnt crust pizza, with the base still good to look at and taste as well, just with spider webs covering it. On July 17, 2020, I started playing Ghost of Tsushima, and then on August 18, 2020, I finished the main story with only, actually, the game didn't tell me what percentage I got, so let's just say there were still some more Mongols to drive out and side missions to do. I'm no stranger to Sucker Punch Games, the studio that made the Sly Cooper series that is one of my favorite, and infamous with the fun superhero/villain sandbox series. So when I heard that their next game is set in 1240 Japan, I was hoping for a better experience than the last infamous game, Second Son, and luckily, I did. Ghost of Tsushima is an impressive looking game with realistic graphics and layers of colors everywhere I visited, although there were some glitches like this headless corpse that were trying to call away. Gameplay was enjoyable with its multiple use of sword stances against different types of enemies that excavates throughout the game. Stealth that is satisfying to pull off and plan before going straight into the action, even though the game encouraged you to go straight into the attack. Equipment that is a lifesaver when I was in a pickle and for taking out enemies in creative ways. And the story kept me interested, which followed Jin, who is trying to save Tsushima from the main antagonist Kotal Khan, right up to the final slice where, try not to spoil too much, becomes something that breaks a tradition that made me think, what kind of person would I be if I was born in this era? Plus, side missions with supported characters like Makasoko, who is seeking revenge for her family, and Norio, a monk who is looking for his brother, are interesting that ends with satisfying payoffs. But outside of missions, some of the activities you do are enjoyable to discover, with shrines that are well put together platforming sections, and fox dens that will reveal secret rewards if certain decisions were made, with the wind that guides you to them, which is a creative way than putting a marker in the game really. Although I don't think it's quite as good as previous titles, mainly because it follows the same routine as other open world titles that are starting to get tiring, such as collecting flowers that are only used for color swaps for your armor and sword cases. And by the end of the game, I felt overpowered with everything I unlocked throughout my playthrough. But despite all that, I still like Ghost of Tsushima with its world, combat, and story, which is a good send-off for the PS4 to make way for the PS5. Oh, and for bonus points, you can officially pet foxes in the game. On August 19, 2020, I started playing Spiritfarer, and then on September 24, 2020, I finished Stella's and Daffodil's story. Now I was going to play the reboot of Battletoads at first, but then during the Nintendo Indie Showcase, they announced that Spiritfarer, a title that I've been keeping an eye on since its debut at E3 2019, was released right after the presentation. And boy, did I not regret that decision. Spiritfarer is an enjoyable simulator where you are settling in characters with their needs, like feeding them with the right type of meals and constructing homes for them with the materials you find and make on your travels. These include growing fruit and veg and then harvesting them, modeling metal and then making them into furnitures, and do activities with them like collecting lightning bolts and freeing a sea dragon from its infection. But the real highlight of the game is doing certain conditions with them and then send them away to the Everdor once they are satisfied with the results. Kinda like Pyre, just without the bat-to-ball-like game that you have to play constantly to win their freedom. However, this handles a subject that is rarely seen in games: death. Because while you might be sad for not seeing them again throughout your playthrough, you remember the last moments you had with them, and they were pretty memorable. Like helping one character, which I'm not going to spoil, who was having trouble walking, and there was another character who had organized a meal out only for him to disappear after it was done. And honestly, he was my favorite character in the game. The only nitpicks I have is that there's too much writing in a few conversations. Minimaps could have been handy for each area I visited, and while the final slide does give details about Stella, it's really just there for when you think you have done enough in the game, even if the ending song is touching to listen to. But despite all that, I like Spiritfarer. It's laid back, has a charming soundtrack and art style, which is definitely better than Battletoads, and it handled the meaning of death without being too depressing. On August 23rd, 2020, which is my birthday, I started playing Black Mesa, and then on September 9th, 2020, I beaten the game. When I started playing the original Half-Life, I realized how outdated the game looks despite running well for a 22-year-old title. But while I was ready to play the original, the remake titled Black Mesa was released before I was about to begin my leftover video for Half-Life, which to be honest, I was expecting the remake to be released in the next year or so. So I decided to play it on my birthday, and after doing so, it's definitely more polished than the original, with the game powered by Source that it still hold up to other game engines, even if the NPCs are sometimes the same, and loading times are still a pain to get through. and it's smoother to play, with guns having a more satisfying kick to them. Objects can now be picked up and put down thanks to the Source engine, and every time I make Gordon sprint, he actually does a sprint animation instead of running like the Scout from TF2. Now, I know what you're thinking, what about Zen? You know, the infamous final slice where it nearly ruined the experience of the original Half-Life? Well, I was a bit skeptical at first because it's longer with 3 chapters, but after playing it, I found it to be an improvement with less first-person platforming and more on sightseeing with interesting set pieces, like tripwire explosives that will contact with one another with exploding plants as well. And there's this one scenario where it reminds me of Half-Life 2's final slice where a certain weapon is fully energized, allowing me to go to town on these alien glass holes. So to wrap this up, I enjoyed Black Mesa, which solves most of the problems from the original, and improved upon them by fixing them. Especially Zen, which is probably the reason why I would rather replay this than the original really. On September 15, 2020, I started playing BPM Bullets Per Minute. Then on September 18, 2020, I beaten the game at Goal. And then on September 29, 2020, I beaten the game as Fair, both on easy. Out of all the mythologies I learned so far, I believe that Nor is the most metal, and BPM is the perfect example with its heavy metal soundtrack that plays in sync with the game. But presentation isn't the selling point. No, the icing or base on this pie is the core gameplay loop, where you need to fire on the beat of the music while you are trying to keep your combo meter up against bats, spiders, and shield grunts that can fire projectiles at you. Then there are the bosses, ranging from an armored knight to a mad drummer that had attack patterns to memorize, and these are the most satisfying to take down, where you can fire the last few remaining shots at them that are in sync with the music. However, the game only got 8 levels, which might last for less than an hour depending on how overpowered you are. But with its roguelike elements like regenerated maps, item placement, and multiple characters to play as, the possibilities of a new run is endless. Especially on hard, the only mode I haven't completed yet. But with the number of deaths I had, I already played enough of BPM to give my overall opinions about it. Saying that, you might be wondering, do I have any complaints? Well, loading times can be a bit of a pain to sit through, but the big one is the game's look. For some reason, they decided to give it one color for each stage and then brighten it up, which doesn't break the game, but it can make it difficult to identify enemies in the environment. Luckily though, they do have the option to alter the saturation of each stage to make it more clear to see, although doing that does make it a little brown in the process depending on what you set it to. But despite all that, I like BPM. Its gameplay is genius, and it's got a killer soundtrack that I can't lay headband to every time I start a new run. So now that's all the games I've beaten, what about the ones I'm still playing? Well, when I started playing Bloodborne in January, I thought I would get it done by October. And boy was I wrong, given the number of deaths I had with this game. But the good news is I'm nearly close to the end, so it might not be long for me to finish this game until the new generation of consoles come out. Let's just hope I don't jinx that. Plus, there is Fall Guys, which I didn't want to do an opinion on yet because I want to check out Season 2 in October to see what things they made during my time with it, given if the game is not full of hackers by then. So check back with me later for extra source videos for this game, and I'll tell you what I think of Fall Guys, Bloodborne, and all the other games I've been playing in the completed menu. And if you like what you see, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Plus stay in touch on my Twitter page, link in the description down below. But until then, I'm Zacharoni. Enjoy your pizza, remember to wash your hands, and I'll see you next time.